Aloha. This is going to be a more comic collected video than it was yesterday because after expressing that passion, it kind of lets everything mellow out and you get to see what's really being said here, because you hear a lot of response, you see a lot of different perspectives, and you also get the support from people, so that passion doesn't have to be interpreted so intensely when people help you interpret that information and support where you're coming from. So before I say anything else, I want to first thank everybody who shared their perspectives, both in support and not in support, because they all help. But specifically for those who support where I'm coming from, because it's difficult in itself alone to just be speaking in reference to flat earth, let alone having to interpret such an extreme out of the status quo perspective along with what's going on with the human experience, because basically they are two different worlds that are very much connected, and it's so complex and all over the place that explaining either one of them or interpreting either one of them is very heavy. It's a lot of energy involved in going into any of that, let alone having to convert that information into something that the individual can understand. But for many other different people with different backgrounds and perspectives and all over the world, pretty much, that's what I try to do, is to break it down from not only my little perspective from how I grew up, what I've experienced, but what the human experience is really going through right now, in reference to the system of haves and have-nots and the control grid as a whole. And then you mix in all this the conspiracy theory stuff, and then you mix in the controlled opposition, the deception, the mainstream media, the mind control. I mean, it's a dense, heavy ass subject to even at all speak on. So like I said in the other video, I commend people, anybody who's speaking in reference to flat earth, and the human story, both together and individually. At the same time, we have to also understand that something like the flat earth could easily be co-opted. This is why I spend so much time and energy speaking in reference to the human story, because the human story is what empowers the people inherently. Individually and collectively, people become empowered when they start to look inside of themselves from a human perspective, and the work that has been done and needs to be done. Something like flat earth is largely outside of us. Now, when you go into the flat earth and you come back to the human story, that's when it comes inside of you. It becomes part of you from an inner space. But what happens is, largely, a lot of people come into the flat earth and they treat it like another Alex Jones hit piece or something like that. It becomes just another Bohemian Grove to, bring down the system or something like that. When how I'm seeing it is that this story is unveiling all of the other conspiracies that are out there. And if it's just treated like another thing that is, in a sense, separated from the human story, then we're going to be missing out on a lot of opportunity and energy to go further into it. So when I see it being commercialized, and when I see this whole like, oh yeah, when it goes mainstream, everything is going to be great. Like, let's just push it along with the mainstream. And what that does, what I'm saying is that misses out on your stream. The human stream gets missed out. And what I'm seeing is that in the so-called flat earth community, the idea of the community is, it just doesn't sit right with me, because the community is everybody. It's the majority of everybody that is being subjected to this haves and have-nots program. So yes, I understand the camaraderie of, having a community and speaking in reference to all that. At the same time, like somebody said in the comment section, and I totally believe this, the real so-called flat earthers are the people who don't call themselves flat earthers. It's not about flat earth and flat earth community and flat earthers and all that other shit. I don't even know what the fuck a flat earther is when I'm rooted in the space of the human experience and what is in and around. See, when I hear that and the rally point of flat earth and flat earther community and all that stuff, it seems to pretty much almost like commercial to me. Like it's another thing. We don't need things. Like flat earth in itself, when it becomes a thing, that thing could be easily commercialized. And we all know, people in the flat earth community that are knowing that it's going to go mainstream, we all know that system could easily commercialize it and is easily going to commercialize it. And they already have the systems and the people in place to commercialize it. And once it's done, then it's going to be completely dead, because they're just going to run it wherever they want to run it. But if you take yourself out of the flat earther community and that whole thing, then you can't be defeated. There's no way you could be defeated if you're standing in a space of the inner space. Nothing, not external. It's like the body. It's like becoming a flat earther is like an individual thinking they're the body when they are actually the soul. It's the same thing in reference to like how you perceive what's going on, and energy and power, your power. When you say, oh, I'm a flat earther, you've labeled yourself, first of all, which limits yourself. Yes, it might make you on a team or in a community or something like that, but largely it just limits you from some things, some kind of expansion, because you're kind of separating people. You're doing this, you're doing that. Something gets lost there. People know. I'm not going to go into depths in it, because I've gone into the depths of that in many of the other videos, but people know what I'm talking about with when they feel kind of off with that whole, I'm a flat earther. If you're not a real flat earther, then this and this and this. And I just don't get that shit. Like, I've already been through the whole camaraderie space for 7 years when I was in the Army. I know what that is. I know the benefits of it. I know the downfalls of, crewing up and that whole thing. But there's something as impactful as flat earth, something as huge, monumental as flat earth. I just don't feel comfortable labeling it and creating some kind of thing, because once you pigeonhole it into some kind of thing, and then you have a tendency to want to hold on to it. And then if you have a tendency to hold on to something like that, then you're ultimately going to lose it. It's going to break, it's going to crumble in your hands, because you didn't have a real understanding, and overstanding of what was really going on there. And you were trying to control something that cannot be controlled. And as soon as you try to control something that cannot be controlled, in order to learn from that lesson, you will lose it. And that's exactly what I see is what's going on with the flat earth so-called community and people who are calling themselves flat earthers. And in reference to the last video with Flat Earth Asshole, that was coming from a space of passion, of realizing that this whole idea of flat earther and that who's a real flat earther and who's not a real flat earther, it's just bullshit. Because there's no such thing as a flat earther in the first place. The only reason why there's a flat earther is because there was already globe earthers. But the idea of globe earthers doesn't exist in the first place. So you create something, a flat earther, for an original illusion. Yes, I understand where it sits and why that exists like that. But what a lot of people are missing when I'm coming at this from this perspective is that if you create an illusion to combat an illusion, then you're going to miss out on the potential that exists outside of both the original illusion and the secondary illusion. The secondary illusion in this case is the positive energy of the so-called flat earth community, the positive energy of the so-called flat earther in reference to the sheep and the globe earthers and the heliocentric model. Yes, that all exists, but inherently what gets missed is the how and the why of the storyline. See, what happens when you commercialize it and you turn it into this flat earther and community thing is you have a tendency of attracting people that just say things. There's a difference between saying the earth is flat and speaking on the earth being flat. There's a difference between saying there's injustices in this world and speaking on injustices in this world. There's a difference between saying that racism exists and speaking on the fact that racism exists and the origins of that. See, there's a lot of people in the so-called flat earth community that just say things, even in a lot of these big channels. And that's where I'm coming from in reference to this whole what perspective, the science of flat earth. The science of flat earth maxes out at saying something about flat earth. And you can say something over and over and over again from many, many, many different perspectives. But are you speaking on it? Are you speaking in reference to what you're saying actually means? Because once you speak on it, in order to speak on something, you have to use your heart. You have to use your soul. But when you say something, anybody can say something out of their mouth. A lot of people talk out of their ass. They just say shit out of their ass. And you can talk out of your ass and you can talk out of your mouth. You can say things out of your mouth. But when you start speaking on something, you can't just say things. That's not speaking on something. You have to actually speak from your soul and know what you're speaking about. See, it's easy to watch all the flat earth clues and the proofs and this and that. And people can go around from house to house, from city to city, and say that the earth is flat over and over again and say all of these proofs. And I understand in order to speak on something, you first have to say it a number of times in a number of ways. I understand that that's the process. What I'm saying now is why a lot of that passion came out yesterday and why a lot of the passion comes out in reference to this so-called flat earth community is because these people have been saying the same shit over and over and over again. Not only to say that there's something wrong with that, but to say that you've had 2 years at least to start speaking on something. And the people who have been speaking on this information have not only been ignored, but they've been labeled as divisive and, oh, those are just people trying to break up the community. See, what you have is an illusory community built around people saying things, and people who are speaking on things about that community and the information that that community is centered around, that expands around that community, people who are speaking on information are demonized. And they're cast out and labeled as trolls and whatever kind of shit that they get put out there. And what gets lost in the sauce? The information itself. Because now you just focused on another movie to watch, something else to say. And the information that the individuals are speaking on gets completely lost. So that's like three things getting messed up there. One thing is the people are ignoring it, and ignoring the people who are speaking on that information. They are saying something is wrong with the people who are speaking on that information and the information itself. And the other thing is that the people who are in and around that so-called community miss out the opportunity of going into the depths of that information completely, because they largely are just followers, following people who are going to think a certain way. And a lot of these people in these bigger YouTube channels know this, consciously or subconsciously. Subconsciously being that maybe they don't consciously know what they're doing, and they're just completely ignorant of how deep this story goes, and they just don't know. So they're unknowingly leading people into a brick wall. And that brick wall is a commercial version of just saying the earth is flat over and over and over again until what? Until what? Until the mainstream finally starts saying it. Because once they start saying it, what do you think they're going to do? They're just going to keep saying it, just like you commercial assholes. It's the same thing. And as long as we continue to just accept the perspective of saying something over and over again, we will never go into the power, the energy, the real camaraderie of speaking on something that actually makes some kind of forward progress. Saying something maxes out at the commercial. It might trigger a lot of people, like what B.O.B. and Kyrie are doing with Flat Earth is they're just saying the earth is flat. It's not really their job to speak on it, because we're not in their shoes. And at the same time, they might definitely be a controlled opposition, and them being in that system, it's in the 90th percentile that they are pushing this into some kind of dead end. I'm not saying they're not. What I'm saying is that our responsibility as people not being in that system have a responsibility to speak on this information, speak on the perspectives that a lot of these other people can't speak on. And in reference to Stevie Wonder, what I was saying in that last video, Stevie Wonder has been speaking on the human story for decades. Many decades before many of the people in the so-called flat earth community today were even born. And when somebody who's just saying the earth is flat over and over again starts saying that somebody is a piece of shit because they're not saying the earth is flat. In fact, they are saying that the earth is a globe, but they're not referencing the fact that this individual has been speaking on the flat earth, or basically on the flat earth. He's been speaking in reference to the human story, actually helping people become better people for basically his entire career. Yeah, obviously he's a part of Hollywood and all that other stuff, and they are definitely using him, whether he knows it or not, to push the climate change and global agenda and all that other bullshit. I understand that. At the same time, I cannot at all think that it's just okay to completely ignore all of the lyrics, songs, albums, perspectives, and work that he has done to help people think about be better people, think deeply about this world. Like somebody reminded me in the comment section, I forgot, he wrote a complete album about the life of plants. Like, I mean, all of the work that gets done, like in reference to Michael Jackson's Earth song, Human Nature, Earth song specifically, and they don't really care about us specifically. Is Michael Jackson wrong? Because I'm sure somebody can find a clip somewhere where he was talking about global warming at one time. I'm sure he said something about it. Because there was a time where the so-called flat earthers were also up in arms about global warming. And that's how I see what Stevie Wonder is. I think that Stevie Wonder is just, living in his bubble of Stevie land and just doesn't really know about the flat earth. Can I say that? Confirm that? No, obviously. But it's real easy to know about a lot of different things and then not really know about the things that really matter, because you're surrounded by people that are just saying things. So what it really boils down to is, does it matter about what these individuals are saying? No, because ultimately it's about what you're speaking on. Yes, Stevie Wonder said that global warming and climate change is, such and such and such and such. At the same time, when he's saying that, what is he speaking on when he says that? Giving him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't know about flat earth. He's speaking on healing, coming together, doing something like that. This is not giving a pass to anybody who's talking about global warming and so on and so forth. This is only specifically talking about Stevie because of his record, his catalog of information that is speaking on the information of the human experience. If you aren't aware of that, then you look at that information. I was pretty much raised on Stevie Wonder music. I can't rattle off all the names and titles because I was a baby, and even a lot of the names and titles and lyrics I don't know today, but I do remember the feeling. I do remember, and I have looked back recently and seen these titles, seen these albums, and just been blown away at how long Stevie's not the only one, how long these individuals have been trying to, like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Look at Earth, Wind, and Fire. How much globe programming is in Earth, Wind, and Fire's album covers or something like that? Like the globe, in their videos. I'm sure there's globes all over the place. Does that take away from what they were actually saying in reference to the human story? See, this is where a lot of people, who the side effect to this whole community and flat earther thing, it starts to eat itself, because what gets lost is the two intentions. There's an intention that I have to help people heal from this human story perspective, which will inherently open up the flat earth perspective, and vice versa. If they go into the flat earth perspective and then start speaking on the human perspective, it will heal the relationship with nature and so on and so forth. But if you only focus on saying the earth is flat and defending flat earthers in the flat earth community, you're starting to step into some murky ground of flat earth egoism, when it really is an illusion in the first place. Because the majority of people in that community, in that space, are really just saying the earth is flat. but they're not really speaking on how and why the heliocentric program came to be. So when you are settling, you're just rallying yourself around a bunch of people who are putting on some fancy costumes and making some fancy videos and talking and just saying the earth is flat, but they're not really speaking on anything. Shit gets lost. And in my perspective, the human story actually gets lost because you're not speaking on how and why. How heliocentrism came to be. Why heliocentrism came to be from a power perspective, from a control perspective. Once you open that door, you start asking questions and reading books about power and control and looking at the history, our story, whatever you want to call it. And you start realizing that it's not only about flat earth. Yes, flat earth might be the most vibrant story in that whole catalog of power and control. But boots on the ground information like people being poisoned in Flint, Michigan, people being shot on the street, the psychological warfare that exists in the human experience, that is not only a result of people just being separated from nature, from the heliocentric programming, but is a result of many different other programs that many different other people have been speaking on. Hence, Stevie Wonder. This is not to give Stevie Wonder a pass or, back, or any of the Hollywood celebrities. All of them are part of that whole bullshit system. I am very well aware of that. But in reference to the human story, which a lot of people are not really going into because you have to go into yourself. Once you start asking how and why, you're seeing more of yourself. It's easy to watch the commercial over and over again of saying the earth is flat, of yourself, of just looking at yourself from a commercial perspective, saying you're a flat earther. That's easy. But once you start speaking on flat earth, you can't speak on it unless you clear out a lot of the shit, unless you start connecting to nature, connecting to a lot of these storylines from the inside out. Like I said, people can talk out of their ass all day. They can blabber out of their mouth all day. But it takes a real deep soul and a big heart to start speaking on something. That's where you start going into the how and the why. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of these so-called flat earthers and the flat earth community and the whole atmosphere of that shit, you lose something. And what gets overshadowed is the how and the why, the human story. And that video that FEA did in reference to Stevie Wonder personified the atmosphere of focusing only on the saying of something and completely overshadowing the how and the why of somebody who's actually been speaking on this information for a very long time. Regardless of all the bullshit that, the climate change and global warming, that individual has been speaking for a lot of these people's silly asses for a long time and has helped a lot of people for a very long time. Like I said, that's not to give anybody a pass or whatever. Even that fucking doesn't even matter. It's always going to boil down to, are you saying something or are you speaking on something? Another example of that is like what I said in reference to Puerto Rico, who are still suffering right now, who are still being held back by government, legislature, and all that other shit. I just watched a video on Instagram just a minute ago where a lady was standing in a warehouse full of bottled water, stacks of bottled water that is being held back by government officials and all kinds of stupid bureaucracy bullshit. That's how that system works. And if you can't realize that that's being manipulated on purpose, then I don't know what's going on. This is why I said, when you speak on the human story, you're cutting to the deep roots of this soul. And you're starting to empower people to rip this shit apart. If you're just saying the flat earth over and over, the earth is flat over and over and over again, you're not really empowering people. You're just saying some shit that's going to get people angry. But when you start speaking on something, that's when you start getting people impassioned about something. They start to feel the compassion of what flat earth really represents when you start talking about or speaking on the how and the why. So this goes into like the government labeling money as speech, like freedom of speech. See, that's a perfect example of the difference between saying something and speaking on something. See, a lot of these people with deep pockets, they can say a lot with their pocketbooks, but have they ever spoken on anything? No, they haven't. Why? Because everybody buys into the world of saying shit. And that's what this whole commercial flat earther community bullshit I'm seeing is. And that's what a lot of people are getting trapped into right now and defending it against other people who are actually speaking on something. As if they're wrong. Oh, you're divisive. That's exactly what that word represents when you label it on somebody who's speaking on something else, including that information. You're trying to divide the community. No. Take that simple ass shit somewhere else. Speak on something. When you have people speaking on something and it's just completely demolishes people who are just saying shit over and over again, then, and simultaneously includes what they're talking about, what they're saying, then the people who are just all on the nuts of that program are just, it hits them hard, and they're just, how dare you talk about Patricia and Mark? They're such wonderful people. They've been saying the earth is flat forever. Here, 50 years from now, the earth is flat. 50 years. We've been in this for 50 years saying the earth is flat. Oh, high five. We did it. We did it, guys. How long you just gonna keep saying the earth is flat? It's the same shit with that money in the government. Money is their version of saying something in that system. Like money talks. That whole thing. This is an illusion. Money doesn't talk in real life. In the illusion of life, money talks. But in the soul of the people experiencing that life, that shit don't mean a fucking thing. Nothing. That's the difference between saying something and speaking on something. So when I said in reference to that Puerto Rico video, you can donate a cajillion, bajillion, trillion, billion, zillion fucking dollars. But your voice is more powerful than any of those illusory slave tickets. Yes, you might get a few bottled waters to people here and there. But why are those bottles of water being held back in the first place? In a time like this. That's the illusion people are missing out on. So yes, it might help here and there, but it helps within the illusion. And that's why I said your voice is more powerful than the money. Way more. There's no amount of money that will ever equate to the power that your voice has. And when people just accept the world where money is bigger, the voice of money is bigger than the voice of the human, that's when we've lost. You're lost. You've completely locked into the illusion. And that's the status quo of today. That's why you have people just talking about, just saying there's a problem in Puerto Rico, having the money and just saying like, oh yeah, I'm going to donate this. I'm going to speak with my pocketbook. I'm going to say this. Here you go. But not going to speak on weather modification. They're not going to speak on the injustices of this system. They're not going to speak on why Puerto Rico is treated the way it's been treated right now. They're not going to speak on the history of the Taino people. They're not going to speak on that place being a territory. They're not going to speak on why or what may come as a result of rebuilding, like gentrification. How I'm seeing it, what happens with this weather modification, like what could possibly be an intent of generating or amplifying all of these hurricanes, is the same thing like gentrification. They run down a city to the bare bones. They burn it down all the way to nothingness. And then when they burn it down, they raise the rent. And the people who have been holding on and still living there, they have to move out because they can't afford it anymore. And then once it's burned down or washed out by a hurricane and everybody's gone, then who comes in to rebuild it? The people who generated the burning and the washing out in the first place. Now they own that land. They've pushed everybody out. Now they own that land. That's the definition of gentrification. Who's benefiting from gentrification right now? Not only the landowners, but the people who are at the tippy top of that haves and have-nots program. This is what gentrification is. Weather modification is just a international scale of gentrification. Weather modification is just an international scale of gentrification. The military-industrial complex has the same effect. There's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Boom, bomb, bang, destroyed. Who owns that land now? Who's got military bases all over Iraq now? Who owns that? Who owns the oil fields? Who's making money off of rebuilding that now? That's just basic math. And if you understand that NASA is heavily engaged in this weather modification world, and you're speaking about flat Earth and exposing NASA, then guess what? Gentrification, the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex, land, colonialism, control, all of that is part of your flat Earth story. And that's what you have to speak on. But you can't speak on that if you are too busy celebrating and consuming yourself with saying the Earth is flat over and over and over and over again. That's just birds chirping over and over and over again. Yes, those birds might wake you up in the morning. You might have been asleep your whole life, and those chirping of those birds, they wake you up in the morning. But it's your responsibility to walk throughout that day after having been woken up and actually start speaking on something. But if you just wake up and start chirping away for the rest of your life, you ain't nothing but another dodo bird out there just chirping and chirping. The earth is flat, the earth is flat, and that is that. Boop, 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 boom. Game over. We did it. No, you didn't, you dumbass. Because the mainstream is just gonna say, "Mine, bitch, gotcha." Now we say it. The earth is flat. What? Yay! We did it. We made progress. We did it, guys, together. I knew it was flat. I knew they were on to something. I'm glad things are really changing. Yes, the earth is flat. It looks like this. Yay! Pictures of Antarctica, the circle. Oh, pictures of the flat earth. It's so wonderful. I want a picture of the flat earth. I want a real picture of the flat earth, not a CGI of the globe. I want to hang it on my wall. Oh, look how beautiful that is. People driving around with flat earth stickers on the whole damn car. The whole car is just a big flat earth fucking map. That's what's happening. That's what's coming down the road when they commercialize flat earth. And that's what these so-called top brass in this mainstream perspective reality are hoping for. They want that because that's as far as they go. It's just saying the earth is flat. Good luck with that shit. Because you're just going to walk people off another damn cliff. Another cliff. Another wall. Why? Because you've prided yourself in the community. You've prided yourself in the label. I'm a flat earther. I'm coming out as a flat earther. And I will say the earth is flat forever. I am a superhero. And I do talk about other potatoes too. So, in your face, do you speak on those other potatoes, or are you just saying you have a bunch of potatoes? And you just saying some shit. Been in kindergarten saying stuff for over 2 years now. You can't play dumb anymore. Once people start saying things over and over and over and over again, that's when you start to realize the difference between who's real and who's not. And that's why I come down so hard on people who just been chirping away. And not only that, and been holding other people down, like demonizing other people because they've been speaking on other stuff and calling them divisive and trolls and all that other nonsense. Now, if you'd step outside of your comfort zone, your comfort blanket for a moment, it's comfortable to be saying things over and over again because you fill the room. Earth is flat. That is that. Keep it flat. That is that. Doot, 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 doot. Anything else? What about that? You're divisive. Remove that individual from this community. Yeah, the earth is flat. The earth is flat. Play the record over and over and over again. Eventually, people are going to start throwing up. I can't do it anymore. Too much flat earth overload. You know why? Because they just keep feeding you shit in your mouth. They keep feeding you flat earth with their mouth. Eat it. Eat it. But when you start speaking on something, it feeds your soul, not just your stomach. See, people have been filling up their flat earth stomach with commercial flat earth fast food for the last 2 years. But you start getting tired of that shit, and you need something that's going to build up your soul. And you need to start speaking on something. But shit, people can live off fast food for their entire lives. They eat top ramen. Basically lived all through high school on top ramen. Hot fries. Junk food. And that's why I really got it, and I'll end it on this. That's why I kind of went off with the whole Stevie thing, because Stevie been putting out soul food. He's been speaking on soul food for the majority of his career. Outside of, him being in Hollywood and all that other stuff, I understand that. It's just gotten more and more controlled up now. But back in the day when people were starting off, they still had real intentions. And they were really talking about, like I said, look at Earth, Wind, and Fire. Look at the albums of Stevie. Look at Michael Jackson stuff that's not famous. A lot of these people were just washed out because they were exposing, because they were speaking that soul food to people. But the time is up in my eyes with that whole fast food, flat food. It's exactly it. A little slip, flat food. Yeah. So like I said earlier, I know everybody has their own spiel. They have their own shtick. Everybody's helping. People need other people to say things before they start speaking on them. Because people who haven't first heard they haven't had the drive-through, the fast food, they haven't had that saying, nobody said it to them yet. They can't really listen to anybody who's speaking to them, speaking on it. So there's stepping. People, I understand people need to go from saying something then to speaking on something, or listening to somebody saying something then to listening to somebody speaking on something. But if you just stay in that little hole, that little comfort bubble of saying something, stay in the drive-through of flat earth McDonald's forever, you're going to get sick. And it's going to start to eat away at you because you didn't realize the next step. That door was already open, because that's what happens when you start saying the earth is flat. You basically, because you can see it when you start researching information, you see the door is cracked. And that door is you. It's not flat earth. The door is the doorway to you opening up. Then once you actually say the earth is flat because you've confirmed it for yourself, that's you actually kicking that door open. And what happens when you kick that door open? That information starts pouring in to you. And you either walk through that door or you drown in the same comfort bubble that you've kept yourself in, because you've prided yourself in kicking open the door and realizing that that door was there over other people who are empty inside. They're empty in that room and the door is closed. Like, oh, shame on you. You think the earth is a globe. Why don't you relish in the world that is flat? It's an entire community. Look, we have meetups. It's so wonderful. We're such amazing people. Don't you love this fast food? Here, you can order some chicken nuggets. There's no curve. Order an apple pie. There's no satellites. Order a Big Mac. Dinosaurs are fake. Order a fish fillet. Water doesn't curve. So on and so forth. But you will drown in that space if you stay there. And that's what I'm seeing is happening with people. I'm not the only one. Look at the comment section right now. I'm sure there's going to be people in there talking about same shit they always say. You're racist. You're stuck. You're divisive. You're this, you're that. I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm glad. Keep making those comments because it just shows people how much work we need to do. It actually helps people be like, man, I gotta say this. I gotta make a video about this. Like, we got a lot of work to do. That's why I don't delete any of those comments. None of it. I just leave it all out there. Just leave it. Look at it. Look at yourself. No separation between you and anybody else on there. Trolls or not, or paid, whatever it is that goes on there. That's what the atmosphere is. Somebody, paid or not, put that information out there. It's going to resonate with somebody, paid or not, out there. So I just leave it. This is another reason why I'm on YouTube, because I could just speak freely from my voice and not have it be filtered through like Facebook or have to convert it into typing or something like that on a Facebook feed. No, this is just how I am, how my perspective is. So when you talk to me in person, it's going to be the same thing. I might be a little less intense because I don't want to, because I'm with somebody's presence right there. So it's an interaction. But here, I'm just speaking with people like I would speak to my brother, my sister, me. This is just how it is, how I feel, what's going on. So that's how I see it. That's where I'm coming from when I was calling out the atmosphere of the so-called flat earth community with the personification of the so-called flat earth asshole. And what really gets lost there. That was a very big thing to me. It was like, man, you've just pretty much personified the world of saying being more important than the world of speaking on something. Because flat earth is the only thing that we need to be focusing on. I got a problem with that. Something wrong with that. People have been speaking on this information for a long time. A lot of people have awakened to themselves in many different ways, whether even if they believed in the globe or not, many, many years ago, because other people have been speaking on information and not just rattling on and saying things over and over again in the drive-through of the flat earth. So I'll end it on that. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the support. Again, I really do appreciate it. Thank you for people who are sharing and liking the videos. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, so thank you. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.